Hey guys, are you looking for a sports book that you can trust? Well, look no further than mybookie.ag, where you can get a 50% match on your initial deposit of up to $1,000 when you use promo code DFSArmy. As a bonus, when you use promo code DFSArmy, you also get a free month of DFS Army VIP and DFS Army Beat the Bookie membership. That's a $100 combined value. So we'll help you with your daily fantasy sports and we'll help you with your handicapping. Free when you sign up for mybookie.ag using promo code DFSArmy.
In 2015, an elite DFS Army Commando unit formed to bring high-level DFS strategy to the masses. Today, hated by DFS sharks and lineup sellers alike, they continue their quest to turn dope into DFS pros.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another DFS Army Bold Calls Fantasy Football podcast, breaking down the wide receiver position for your season-long fantasy drafts. My name is Kevin Allen, aka the Geek. I'm hosting this one, and I've got my fantasy football super analyst on the line with me. Season-long says, "What's up, my man?"
We are rolling now, baby. Just pumping out the pods. This is what I like. People have been asking, where's the content? We answer. So I'm excited to get back into it again. Today is the 11th of June. Let's roll, baby.
Hell yeah. It's obviously really early in the drafting season. I'd say we're pretty knee-deep in our best ball league drafts, but most people probably haven't even thought about starting to draft their season-long teams yet, and that's probably a good thing because we're going to learn a whole lot over the course of the next few weeks about some of these players. But the wide receiver position is, of all the positions, is generally going to be pretty stable. It's going to be a lot more stable than, for example, running back, which we'll see players emerge and people we didn't think were starters become starters and whatnot. But the wide receiver position, would you say it's pretty stable from between now to the start of the regular season?
I would say it's stable in the top 24. Once you get out of the top 24 wide receivers, which you'll see as we talk about them, there is not a lot of predictability or consistency to their games, which kind of lends itself to the argument of taking wide receivers early, which is totally different than what we've seen in traditional fantasy football where you attack the running back position. So I think overall, yes, there's some year-to-year consistency, but game-to-game consistency is very volatile when you talk about wide receivers.
Well, of course, yeah, and that being a totally different metric. That's why on the daily side, we tend to think of consistent high-end running backs as your cash game, your consistent players, whereas you want to win tournaments with wide receivers that go off kind of surprisingly from week to week. But before we get into this breakdown, let me give a little bit of updates of what we have going on at DFS Army for their season-long draft, and then we'll jump into this breakdown of the wide receiver position. But just to let everybody out there know, we are working on our 2019 fantasy football draft kit, which will have all the stats, rankings, everything broken down, basically everything you need to crush.
Inaugural draft kit, first ever super draft kit.
Yeah, it'll be our first ever full blast draft kit, which will be available either to purchase if you want to go to dfsarmy.com and just buy the draft kit. You'll get Alan's rankings, season long says. You will get my rankings, incredible notes next to each player name. We're going to pick out our sleepers, our busts, those players. I mean, my running back, I've got players, that you're getting in the 12th, 13th round that I believe can and will win you your fantasy leagues. You will crush your friends. And that draft kit comes for free if you're a DFS Army subscriber. We focus on all things fantasy. Obviously, daily fantasy is our bread and butter. But I love me some season long fantasy football, and that's what I'm into.
Are you going to make a pledge to your listeners right now that if they don't win their whole fantasy football league, you're just going to give it to them? You're going to triple their money back? Is that what you're saying?
I will not do that because even though I can give you the information, I can't force you to use it properly. So when you grab Ronald Jones Jr. in round like 5 because you're like, Kevin said he could win you your league, Well, yeah, he could have if you took him in round 12 and he became a starter. Not when you take the guy over a real starter. So, yes.
Yeah, I've seen some early versions of your draft kit, and what's really great is it's excellent for people that are just beginning fantasy football, but it's also very useful for people that have been playing for 20-plus years. It conserves both and all ranges of players. So that's what I really like about how you've designed the kit.
Absolutely, and it's going to be awesome. And, we'll get to that. It's not quite live yet, and that's in the works. We will have it probably launched within the next couple of weeks from today, or at least like around July 1st, or around when you don't want to come out too early because you have a lot of changes to consistently make with these things. But we'll get something going probably by July, and then refurbed and rehashed and updated throughout the August draft season. So let's just jump right in.
I was going to say July 4th is like the official kickoff of fantasy football draft season. So I think that's a good timing right there.
Hell yeah. You're full from your barbecue. You go on in, you watch the fireworks show, and then you're like, all right, let's start to concentrate on our draft. But let's jump right into the wide receiver position for this season and where we're at right now. I would say initially I like to talk about strategy-wise. Where are you taking the first wide receiver? We know pretty much who the top guys are.
All right, so I think that's what we're talking about. Like when you're looking at your 12-team PPR draft, and obviously there's going to be variations with different formats, but most of us play in 12-team PPR. It's when do you take that first receiver? And we talked about it a little bit in the podcast, but I think that there are 5 running backs, maybe 6, that you should take before the receivers. But after those 6 running backs are off the board, before you start when you're in the middle of your draft, 6 through 12, I think you have to really consider pivoting to wide receiver. Now, that said, if you like to start your draft with a wide receiver and you pick in the top 5, I have no problem with that. So I think optimal strategy at this point in time is starting at pick 6 all the way down to the end. You might have to consider your first pick to be an elite wide receiver.
Absolutely. And I would say, you said in the top 5, I am not accepting of somebody who would take a wide receiver in the top 3. That's completely unacceptable to me.
I don't know.
After those first 3 that I will accept it.
I don't know if I mean, unacceptable is it's all format dependent. When you have to start 3 receivers and a flex in PPR, now I know those top 3 running backs also catch 80 passes, so it's like having a receiver, so you could be onto something. But it would be hard to make a great argument why not. There's so much stability in some of these elite receivers. But I understand overall what you're saying.
There's more those top 3 in particular. When you're talking about Barkley, Zeke, and Christian McCaffrey.
I would include Alvin Kamara.
I do not include Alvin Kamara personally in that group. So we disagree.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, we disagree on that. But I don't. He's not. He's just not of the level of volume. He's efficient. We talk about. We're getting into that. But I'm not going to include him. Right. I actually, when I tier him, he's a tier below because he just doesn't have the volume of the other 3 guys. But he might score as many points and all that, but he doesn't have the floor because the volume isn't there.
Why don't we start it with we each in order talk about our top 5 receivers? Why don't you just shoot me down the list of your number 1, number 2, all the way through your number 5 receiver, and then I'll say mine, and we'll see if there's any differences in our top 5 in order.
Cool, I love that. All right, so let's run through our top 5, and here's mine. So, and there's one conspicuous absence for my top 5, but I've got DeAndre Hopkins going number 1 overall. He's my top overall play. Just so much volume. So many touchdowns.
Well, we'll get into the reasons why after. Just list them out.
So I'll just list them out in my order. I've got Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Odell Beckham Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster, and then Julio Jones. Those are my top 5.
Okay, so my top 5 would be very similar to that, but a little bit different order. I have Devontae Adams as wide receiver 1. Hopkins is number 2. Julio Jones is 3. I have Michael Thomas at 4, and I have Juju Smith-Schuster at 5.
You're an Odell hater.
No, not an Odell hater. I think obviously Odell is set up to have the best season of his life with the best quarterback he's played with in his professional career. I just don't think that you can project Odell Beckham for 16 games. I think you have to project him for 13 and a half games. And that for me is enough just to knock him down just a little bit under the top 5.
I mean, that's fair. For me, my issue with Michael Thomas, who you have significantly higher than I do, is I just think he doesn't get deep passes. His ADOT is too short. He's basically a glorified slot receiver. And
now, just for
really
the listeners who are starting, who aren't familiar, just explain what ADOT is.
Average depth of target. So, in essence, Michael Thomas, unlike a lot of these other names, they're throwing to him right by the line of scrimmage, and he's getting his scoring. I'll bust out a stat here for you. I don't have the ADOT in front of me, but I'll bust out a stat here. His receptions to targets ratio is one of the highest in the NFL by far. It's at like 90%. So they threw to him 147 times. He caught 125 passes. The depth of target is, I believe his ADOT is somewhere around 6 yards. So basically, they're throwing to him right around the line of scrimmage, and he's making something happen, which is great. But he's not, and he did produce touchdowns last year, which is fine. But to me, his average yards per reception of 11.2. I'm gonna actually let me pull up a comparable here, just so we have something to compare that to. His average yards per reception is 11. Julio Jones is at 15.
Yeah, I mean you're talking about in the elite tier, but the reason why I would argue for Michael Thomas to be a top 5 wide receiver is they throw to him a ton, and I know he's scored 9 touchdowns twice in the last 3 seasons. His touchdowns from 2016 were 9, then he had 5 in 17 and 9 in 18. But to kind of balance out that short depth of target, he does catch 125 passes, and in PPR leagues, 125 is probably number 1. I mean, you don't. That is like adding another handful of touchdowns. So remember, this is fantasy. Now, in reality, short targets, we like when the ball's thrown down the field. But just because he's catching so many passes, his catch percentage is high, that really does make the difference in putting him in the elite tier. But, I mean, how far down did you put him in your rankings? What number wide receiver?
He was next. He was number 6. So, I mean, we're not dropping him off the –
Got it.
But
I understand.
I squeezed – Juju Smith-Schuster above him. I mean, it's really not – and I still have Odell Beckham. Although, listen, an argument can be made, but I think Odell has a little bit – like I said, it's just that
he has
yards per reception. He's at 11. All these other guys are at 12, 13. But you're right. Michael Thomas is going to get more receptions.
Yeah, I think that Odell Beckham, we haven't even seen the ceiling yet. And obviously, if he played all 16 games – and he plays at the level that we know and seen that he's capable of, he has number 1 overall upside, number 1 overall player upside above any even running backs.
I mean, he's been with a garbage quarterback.
Right. No, we know that. We know that. But I think the issue is that Jarvis Landry is still going to command some targets. They're going to spread the football around a little bit. And as much as we know Odell could be the number 1 overall wide receiver, in my rankings, I just knocked him down a little bit because of the injury history, and I was unable to project him for a full season.
Totally fine. I think his injuries have been fluky, so I don't have him as an injury risk player. But you're right, he has been injured a couple times. But we will go over some injury risk players because that's a major factor across all of DFS, and I think more so in the running back position. But it's a significant factor in terms of where you're going to draft somebody. And you're right, Odell has just not been able to. He's small. He's diminutive. But you don't need to be massive at the wide receiver position, but he's not a big guy.
All right, so why don't you that everything you said makes sense there. Just list me your next 5. Give me 6 through 10. Just bust them off. I'm curious what you have.
All right, so Michael Thomas, Antonio
6.
Brown,
7.
Michael Evans, Amari Cooper.
At 9?
Yeah. And then T.Y. Hilton.
Okay, I'm a little worried about T.Y. Hilton. See, I mean, he's a great player, deep threat. They get Jack Doyle back. He definitely soaks up some targets. Eric Ebron came on last year. They added Devin Funchess, and now the rookie Paris Campbell. Now, I'm not arguing that T.Y. Hilton isn't a great player, and he's been pretty consistent year to year. But with some injury risk and some more mouths to feed, and he's I think he's getting a little bit older. He's got to be close to 30 at this point. You still comfortably putting him in your top 10 and drafting him as a wide receiver 1.
I mean,
is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think, for example, the rookie wide receiver is going to be much of a threat. I don't think Jack Doyle is much of a threat for his targets. I think the Colts. I just don't think we've seen the best out of Hilton the last couple of years. He had some injury issues. Also, he's had some injury concerns. Last year he only played 14 games, and some of those games that he did play, they were with an injury. So it's hard. There was a lot of times when he was questionable. Is T.Y. going to play this week? And then they played him, but they just kind of trotted him out. So I think the 14 receptions or 14 games number was misleading in terms of his reception totals, because a couple of those games he was just kind of being trotted out as a decoy, from what I recall last year. So, but I think if T.Y. could have a full healthy year with a full healthy Andrew, I just like players on offenses that score a lot of points. So if you're giving me a choice between T.Y. Hilton and A.J. Green, who also carries risk, right? And he also carries injury risk. He also carries I'm on a shitty team risk that doesn't score a lot risk. Whereas T.Y. Hilton, at the very least, the Colts put up, 28 to 35 points every single week. So there's going to be that opportunity for T.Y. to make big plays.
A.J. Green, by the way, I have a feeling about the Bengals. I think when we do our bold prediction segment podcast, I have one of mine that I wrote down, and I just have to kind of play with it, is that the Cincinnati Bengals finish as a top 12 offense. It's one of those just I have no proof. I just have a gut feeling with Zach Taylor, the new coach there that came from the Rams offense and is installing the Rams playbook there. They have the tools. I think that's going to be the surprise offense. So health, is going to be a factor with A.J. Green. I think he's playing for a contract or an extension, but that's going to be one of my surprises. Now, in my 6 through 10 was pretty similar. I had Odell Beckham at 6, Antonio Brown at 7. Now, I had Amari Cooper at 8 above Mike Evans at 9, and then at 10, this may surprise you, but I had Kenny Golladay, and I know that's
bold.
Yeah, and I know it's bold, and I know it's and that puts him up. It's one of those things where I'm trying to get ahead of it a little bit before it happens, and you just look at what he did, and I know Matt Stafford wasn't good last year, but I have a Kenny Golladay feeling this year, more so than Adam Thielen or Diggs or A.J. Green. So I pushed Kenny Golladay up aggressively, and I'm getting mass exposure to him in my best balls, obviously because I like him better than the Fields.
I mean, if you have him ranked there, and the field basically has him 7, 8, 9 spots later, yeah, you're going to have massive exposure to Kenny G. And you know what? Nothing wrong with that. He looks like a WR1. He looks like a stud. They got rid of Golden Tate. There's really no pass catchers on that team. Marvin Jones Jr. and Kenny Golladay and a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit too aggressive in terms of like a draft strategy, but for a ranking, absolutely,
right?
Perfectly.
And I think you just hit on it. I think you hit on it perfectly. Like when we put together our rankings, that necessarily doesn't mean just take that guy next when you're drafting. You have to pay attention to where these players are going in the draft. And if you're picking early in the draft and you're not going to take, when it comes back around in the second round, you're not going to take Kenny Golladay there because you certainly don't need to. But you could wait till your third round pick early on. But if you're picking in the middle of third round, Kenny Golladay is kind of going at the end of the third round, so you better take him if you like him. So you wouldn't need to, again, pay attention to where the players are being drafted, and you could get aggressive on them, but still don't jump too far ahead of ADP, or else you're not going to get yourself much value.
A perfect advice. Or, for example, let's say, and on the same theme, because I think this is more important a lot of times even than the rankings themselves, how you draft and how you approach it. If I'm approaching it, let's say my pick 2.7 comes up, and I'm looking at, Keenan Allen's available, Adam Thielen, Diggs, that whole group, the Rams wide receivers, and you want Kenny G, right? And you have him ranked above all of those other guys. But you're like, fuck, this guy's ADP is really mid to late third round, and here I am, like, kind of, I'll have an early third rounder coming up after my late second rounder. What you do is you shift over to the running back position, grab a tight end. Don't take the position group where you have a player in that position group ranked significantly above all the guys that are available. Instead, you say, you know what, let the other suckers take these guys. I don't want them. Let me jump over and grab, a TE1 right now where, let me jump the field on Travis Kelce. Or let me grab my RB2, get that out of the way. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna shift over to the position where you like the value of the player that's available, and knowing that, hey, I can wait till the third round to grab my Kenny Galladay share, and he'll be there still because his ADP is end of the third, and I'm picking 3.4. So that's the type of stuff the decisions that you need to make. That's more of snake draft strategy, stuff than it is rankings, but the right way to approach your draft, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, that's strategy 101 right there. And it's good that we talk through it, because we all know these basic strategies, but when we actually talk through it, it's getting that muscle memory back of how to draft. And when we get into our mock drafts, ADP and the average draft position, we're not familiar with them. So we have to really exercise discipline and control and not just draft all our favorite players, and make sure that we're taking the most valuable selection and the best players for the context of our team at every draft.
Hell yeah. All right, let's keep this going. So we're in the middling tier here of the draft. We're talking about the bottom of the WR1 group and kind of the midway to the WR2 through the full WR2 group here, and a couple of sets of receivers that come up. One guy that I'm lower on, I think, than the field, for example, is Keenan Allen, who seems to be ranked as a WR1 by a lot of people. I'm kind of a little down on him this year. Am I crazy? I kind of think that he's a volume monster. Really, that's where most of his production comes from, just PPR volume more than especially touchdown scoring. And now with a couple other weapons coming to life on that Chargers team between Hunter Henry and the emergence of Mike Williams, I'm just not sure that volume's going to be there for Keenan Allen. Like, I'm lower on him than the field right now.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are in agreement on Keenan Allen. We both think he's a perfectly good player, especially in PPR formats where you get a point for every catch. I just never seem to click on him where he goes in the end of that second round. There's always a player I like better. I know that in the past he had a couple injury-riddled seasons, but he has since bounced back and played full season. So I don't think that's more of a concern than it is for any other player. And also, you and I both really agree with Mike Williams is about to take a huge step forward, and I think it was he in his third year now, and we spoke about him on another podcast where he scored 10 or 11 touchdowns on only 66 targets last year, and that is just has to go up. I mean, they lost Tyrell Williams to free agency. I think that was only about 75 or so targets, but Mike Williams should be able to double his production from a yardage standpoint and target outlook. So if Mike Williams goes up, if Hunter Henry comes back and conform to the potential that we think he can, somebody might take a step back. And it's not that we don't think Keenan Allen is a good player. It's just that we don't think that he's going to be worth a second-round pick, probably more of a late third, early fourth, but we'll never get him there because he'll have his fans. So I think you and I are in agreement here that Keenan Allen for us is a pass in the second round.
Yeah, I just think he's going too high. I think the situation on that team changes. People I assume people forget that Mike Williams is a top 10 draft pick. This guy was drafted to be an alpha receiver. He did not get the alpha treatment last year. 66 targets, 43 receptions, 11 touchdowns. But what we did see was that my man is a touchdown catching machine, and he caught almost everything thrown his way. So when a guy catches 80% of the targets thrown his way, man, throw him the fucking ball some more. So, I mean, you just have to expect that that's what they're going to do. He came on late. I like it when players are surging late in the season before. That kind of should carry over. All right, a couple other situations to look at. And I'm going to give you some either-ors here because there's a couple of teams whose entire wide receiving corps are right here in this kind of WR2-ish range, top of the WR2 range. So we've got the pair from the Vikings, and we've got the pair from the Rams. right? And it's very unusual to see.
It's actually from the Rams. It's a trip. It's not a pair. It's a triple.
I mean, yeah,
you
Cooper
talk about
Kupp
Brandon.
is, all WR2. That's right. All three of the Rams receivers fall in WR2 category.
Yeah, I'm just last year. I was both of us aggressively drafting Cooper Kupp ahead of his ADP. This year, people are acting like he didn't get injured in the middle of the season. He had a serious injury, which should take over a year to recover fully. So that would be, I think he got hurt somewhere in the week 5 to 7 range last year. People are still taking him in the 4th, 5th round. I just don't see how you could take Cooper Kupp until he falls to like the 10th round, which means we're not going to get him. So I'm letting someone else take him. I'm not so sure he's going to be playing week 1, and if he does, he's certainly going to be compromised. That injury at least would take him till midseason to get back to Cooper Kupp form. So with the Rams, you might be right to say let's only consider the duo, because right now we're not touching Cooper Kupp in the 5th round.
That's right. If I'm going by ADP, and I should have suggested that, by ADP, Cooper Kupp is right there with these other two guys. But a sharp player.
Do you agree?
If you're sharp, You're not taking Cooper Kupp. Remember, last year, the difference was we loved Cooper Kupp, but he wasn't even in the conversation with Woods and Cooks. They were going multiple rounds ahead of him, right? So Cooper Kupp was the value play, and I did not like. I had dropped Woods and Cooks very far down my draft.
Cooper Kupp got hurt in week 10 last year, so that's even later than I thought it was. And he sat out week 11 through the end of the season.
It also harms all three of them. When all three of them are playing, it's rare. It's borderline impossible for all three to have a good game. And so when you have that situation happening, it's legit borderline impossible for 3 wide receivers from the same team to produce quality scores.
Right, but Cooper Kupp and Woods were getting a little bit more consistent production. There was definitely some spike weeks for Woods. I think Brandon Cooks, even though he has the earliest ADP out of all those, is the boomer bust player. Brandon Cooks would blow up, and then he would have a 2-catch for 28-yard type of game. So it's funny that he's always the first one to go, certainly because he has the high ceiling, but he was the most volatile of the bunch.
In the end of the day, they were all very similar. Their production did not, I'm not going to include Cooper Kupp in this, but Robert Woods, 86 receptions last year, 130 targets, 7 touchdowns, right? Brandon Cooks, now, there were spike weeks and whatnot, but, it's so close. 80 receptions, 117 targets, 6 touchdowns. So, 7 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 6 more targets. The numbers are very similar. Now, Brandon Cooks' yardage, 1204. Let's see where Woods wound up, 1219. It's scary how similar these guys are, or at least how similar they were last season. But, yeah, if you go stat logs and whatnot, I do think Brandon Cook had a little more frequent blow-up games, whereas Robert Woods was a little bit more consistent from week to week. But in the end, it was all very similar stuff, and I think they're both worthy of WR2 status. Who do you take first?
Right now, I'm passing on Brandon Cooks. I like Robert Woods better, but Cooks is going first. I, again, pass on him usually because I'm not looking for there's other players I like better in that area, but Robert Woods is like a 4th-round pick. Cooks is a 3rd.
Nice. All right, I'm going to give you the other pairing. That comes up here in the WR2 section, even top of WR1, but more WR2 section, and that's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Now, it's really interesting because Adam Thielen had this incredible start last year. We had some 7 or 8 100-yard games in a row. He was like Mr. Consistency, and then he kind of fell off a cliff. And actually, it's funny. I want to look at the game logs because it's really poignant to consider the game logs from last year. The early part of the season, I'm gonna read you these numbers. It's gonna blow your mind. Just fantasy points totals, non PPR, because that's what this thing is showing me right now. 10 fantasy points, 19, 11, 20, 18, 18, 17, 16. That was week 1 through week 8. Stephon Diggs hurt or half-assing it for a lot of those weeks. Then starting week 9, it all went off the hill. 9 points, 9 points, 9, 8, 2, 8, 4. So his fantasy yards production dropped significantly. Went from 100-yard games every single week through week 8 to 22 yards, 60, 28. Didn't have another 100-yard game all season. 20, 70, 30, 80, 60, 38. Really, really a tale of two seasons. And if you look last year at Stephon Diggs, I'm going to go through his game by games. Had big games in the second half, not exclusively. Had some, I think, just in general, that team also had some tough sledding in the second half. Across the board, Stephon Diggs had fewer 100-yard games, but towards the end he had some 12s, 11s, caught some touchdowns. Mediocre second half. Week 11, 19 points. Week 8, 18 points. 27 week 2. So he was playing here most of the season. But, I mean, I don't know what to make of these two. What do you do with this pairing here? Do you favor one over the other?
Yeah, I think, again, we'll just start with Thielen. He started off the season, the first half of the season, he was the overall wide receiver 1, and then just literally disappeared off the map. So that's concerning. Usually it's something like Julio Jones, for example. He didn't score a touchdown in the first 8 games and then had a touchdown every week thereafter. You like to see it flipped. So Thielen, I've been passing on him in the second round. I'm really concerned. Kirk Cousins didn't look comfortable in that offense. You got to think in year 2 he'll probably have a little bit more consistency and feel comfortable in it's in his environment, with the playbook. So Thielen at the right price, I'm still interested in. Now, the good and the bad about Stephon Diggs. Are you drafting this guy ever in the second round? Because that's where you have to take him. Like, in all the drafts you've done, did you even consider taking him in the second round where he's going?
No.
Right, neither did I. So that's the bad. We both, in our heart of heart, feel like he's overpriced for all the reasons that you just outlined. You just can't count on any sort of consistent production. Now, if Stephon Diggs was your third receiver on your team somehow, just say it fell like that, you'd feel great about it. Now, so here's the good. The good is Stephon Diggs is never going to be one of those wide receivers that you agonize over every weekend. My least favorite part of fantasy football is those 50-50 decisions you have to make every week on your second or third wide receiver. You just hate it. Diggs is a guy you just put in there and you leave him in your lineup and you take the good production, take the bad, and you know at the end of the season you're going to get what you paid for. In the second round, I'm not so sure that's true. So I would advise passing on Stephon Diggs, not because that we don't think he's a good player and we'll get his, but there are more consistent players in the second round, even at wide receiver, than him. Now, if Diggs falls somewhere to the end of the third, which could happen, you never know, especially when you're talking about leagues that start, that have tight end premiums and super flexes. But in your regular 12-team PPR league, if somehow if the field passes on him, feel free to take him in that 3-4 turn. But in the second round, he never is a player that excites me.
I actually want to state, because you just nailed something. For me, a big thing that's been going on is when I see these guys available and it's the end of the second round or it's early in the third, and I see this group that we're talking about right now: Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks. I end up checking my tight end tab, and I'm like, oh shit, Kittle's available. Oh shit, Ertz is available.
Yeah, not for long though.
No.
Kittle has been consistently going in the second round.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like you're in that second round area, and these guys are there, and I'm kind of like, I don't want to take this wide receiver here. I'm down on some of the same guys. Like, I'm not excited about AJ Green or Keenan Allen or a couple of those other names that are always floating around.
Let me give you a scenario, okay? You've taken David Johnson. We both like him, or in the first round with pick 6. Now it comes back around, and all those receivers, Keenan Allen, Diggs, Thielen, are all there, or you could take Kittle. Are you taking any of those receivers over George Kittle?
I'm grabbing Kittle. The scarcity of that position group is such that if you get one of the top 3 guys, you have a significant edge on the field compared to everybody. You're basically, your tight end position will be better than your opponent every single week of the season.
I can't wait to talk about the tight ends. I know that's the next podcast. I
know. We'll combo tight ends and quarterbacks, though, into one, because those are 2 topics we can hammer through. Fewer players.
But, by the way, I'm pushing Ertz a little bit out of that top tier. I mean, he's the bottom of that tier. And I know Carson Wentz loves to find Ertz, and he's a trusted target. And it's not that I don't think he's going to be great, but I think we're going to see the emergence of Dallas Goedert in a major way this year at the tight end position, combined with all the other passing targets. Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, we won't have to dive too deep, but I agree with you. I think Goddard, more than the other things, is a significant reason why that's elite volume for Ertz is going to be lower than Kittle and Kelsey, which is why, to me, Kittle and I always take the other two. Ertz is my number 3 of that group.
I'm making a note right here to talk about that when we
100%.
when we talk about tight ends. Okay.
Cool. All right, so let's keep going with these groups. Now we have the player that everybody loves to hate, but all he does is produce. Julian Edelman. All he does is produce every single year, great numbers when he's healthy.
I mean, Julian Edelman, I don't know anybody that hates him as a fantasy player. I mean,
when I say everybody, no one gets excited to draft Julian Edelman. No one's excited about that pick.
I would be excited to draft Julian Edelman. I mean, he's Tom Brady's most trusted target. Now there's no Gronk. I mean, health is always a concern. He's getting a little bit older. He's 33 years old right now. But in the 3rd round, if you need a receiver, I'm taking him all day with no worries whatsoever.
PPR league, not a touchdown guy, which is the concern. I think that a lot of people have. He did score touchdowns last year though, but that's not traditionally been him.
Yeah, I mean, are you concerned about Julian Edelman in any way? I mean, we have the age and injury concern, but are you concerned that if he's on the field that Tom Brady's looking for him first and foremost?
I'm not concerned because he gets you 100 yards. It depends on the scoring format, but if I'm not getting a full point for PPR, then there are other places I might look at that point.
Yeah, we're talking PPR leagues. I would take him above Stephon Diggs in the PPR
it's
format.
Fair. It's totally fair. I mean, he only had 12 games of production last year, and he had pretty good numbers. I mean, that's a peak year for him. But if we extrapolate 850 yards, 74 receptions on 12 games, and we extrapolate that into a 16-game season, which, can he play 16 games? I don't know. But, that gets you to about 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, maybe touchdowns.
He falls into that category of receivers that you just don't ever have to make a decision on. So if he's playing, if he's active, you start him. If he misses some games, sure, you're going to have to hopefully you've drafted a deep bench or you could take a flyer on another receiver. But these receivers that you could just put in the lineup and not have to make a decision on hold a special kind of value.
Absolutely. All right, so let's run through some more of these guys. We're getting to the WR3 zone here. We've gotten past most of the elite names. There's a few more left, and I'll throw out some names that are going really high this year. I think these are still WR2 level players. I'm talking about DJ Moore. I'm talking about Chris Godwin. I'm talking about Calvin Ridley, maybe. Mike Williams, I kind of have in that category still of WR2 potentially. Do you think Tyler Lockett belongs in this conversation?
Absolutely, and I think he belongs at the top of that conversation. Tyler Lockett had an insanely efficient year last year on a limited targets. I think he had 75.
70 targets, he was just 57 receptions, 10 big touchdown scorer.
Right. So Russell Wilson, who's one of the most accurate QBs, and Seattle didn't throw a lot last year. I think they got 450 time, which was close to bottom of the NFL. But every time it seemed like Russell Wilson did that hair on fire play where they just run around. Him and Tyler Lockett knew exactly what each other was thinking, and they were able to connect. Now, I don't think it's groundbreaking to say that Tyler Lockett's not going to score 10 touchdowns on 70 targets again, but with the retirement of Doug Baldwin, I don't think we're going to project Tyler Lockett for 125 targets, but I think we could safely assume that project him to around 90, 95 targets, and that's going to be an efficient 95 targets. So you're taking a little bit of a chance with Tyler Lockett if you take him in the 4th round, as far as you're betting on that efficiency, but it's a gamble I'm willing to take. I've drafted Tyler Lockett in many drafts, including a couple dynasty startups. I got a few weird looks from people that thought Mike Williams and Calvin Ridley belonged above him, but still only 25 years old. He's playing with a great quarterback. People say it's a run-first team, Seattle. Sure, but Tyler Lockett is the new number one receiver there for 2019, and he's going to be playing out of the slot, which we know is ripe for fantasy production when they put you in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just turn him into Doug Baldwin, and yeah, it won't take. If somebody's expecting 120 targets for this kid, it's not going to happen. That offense does not. It is a run-first offense. They aren't going to throw to him a lot, and he's not going to have 10 reception games. He just won't. But the efficiency is ridiculous, and it's almost always bombs that are being thrown to him, and he scores a lot of touchdowns on them. So it's like, whatever. Is he going to get you consistent PPR points week to week? No. But
well, I think that could change a little bit because they are putting him in the slot, and maybe they're set. And the rookie they drafted, DK Metcalf, is going to be outside a little bit more, and they have David Moore who flashed a lot in his first season with the Seahawks. So Tyler Lockett could be the recipient of a lot of those shorter passes, and he is pretty good after the catch as well. So
even if he is, they just don't throw it that often. That I've had Russell Wilson as my dynasty quarterback. Like, I've had him long enough to understand his pattern. They just don't throw. They virtually never top 24 targets in a game on that team. So, that team throws 10 to 15 less targets per week than a team like the Colts or a high-flying offense. So there's just not as much to go around.
But those are Russell Wilson targets. They're more valuable than an Andy Dalton target. They're accurate. They're on point. So they definitely have more value.
100%. So that's a trade-off. But they will not throw as frequently. They just won't. But like you said, yeah, Russell Wilson's completing these bombs. He's probably the most efficient deep play quarterback in the league, and I think he's the most efficient quarterback in the NFL. So it's not like we're talking about a 60%, a 55% completion ratio. He's throwing, just look at his numbers last year. So to prove your point, 70 targets, 57 receptions. He's catching 80% of what's being thrown his way. And wait, I'll get you an even better number. Average yards. We talked about with Mike Thomas how his yards per reception were a super low 11.2. The yards per reception for Tyler Lockett are a borderline league leading 16.9 yards per reception. So the polar, even with the same efficiency almost as a Michael Thomas, but with the polar opposite in yards per reception.
That's a really interesting point. And when you talk about this grouping of receivers, the fifth round, the 4th through 6th round, someone that's getting ignored and pushed down the draft boards in a lot of drafts, and I could see the case, but I'm not exactly sure why, is Jarvis Landry, who had 81 catches last year. For the first 4 games, the quarterback situation was Tyrod Taylor changed to Baker Mayfield. People are high on Baker Mayfield. Odell Beckham's coming into town. What is your take on Jarvis Landry? How many actual receptions do you see him getting this year? What kind of range? And is he a player that you're looking to take as your second receiver, say in the 5th round?
I don't mind him as a number 2 receiver, and there are some players that I would take him ahead of that are being ranked ahead of him. For example, the aforementioned Cooper Kupp or even a Sammy Watkins type player. But in general, no, I do think the outlook is a little bit down for Jarvis because Odell Beckham's there, and he's going to suck up a lot of that passing volume. I do think the Browns are a team that's going to spread the football around. I don't think that Jarvis Landry is a garbage player. I think he's a really, really good player.
84 and a half receptions, under over, if you had to bet $1,000.
I'm going to go under on that number.
Okay, so he had 81 last year. The year before, 112, and then the year before that, it was about 95. So you're under 84 and a half. How about under over 80 and a half?
That sounds about right. So I was kind of predicting him to get about 80 receptions this year at the top end of the range. Okay. So I'd probably still be under on 80 and a half, but right there, right there.
All right.
What do you think? Over?
I think you hit it right on the head. If you're drafting Jarvis Landry, a reasonable projection is 80 catches, 950 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think that's what you should expect, and you just hope that it's not all in and concentrated in 7 weeks. You hope it's spread throughout, and you could start him as your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 if you get him in the 6th round every week. That's what you're hoping.
Yeah, or you'd hope that maybe some of that get a little bit of luck, and maybe that 5 touchdown number goes to 8, and then all of a sudden you had a great year fantasy scoring wise. I'm going to throw out some other names that are kind of really, really hot buzz names in this section here, in this sort of range, this WR2, WR3 range for your fantasy draft, because this is the meat. These are the decisions that will make or break your team. It's pretty easy to choose a stud running back in round 1, another stud running back, and in round 2 or 3. But it's this 5th, 6th, 7th round wide receiver position, for example, on your fantasy team. This is going to make or break you. So DJ Moore, one of the hot names. Chris Godwin, another hot name right now. DJ Moore, the rookie from last year. Funchess is out of the way for Carolina. He's still dealing with a mediocre armed quarterback in terms of Cam Newton, who is not an efficient quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. So he's got that, but he looks to be explosive. Had a couple good games at the end of the last season. And the other guys are, and I actually want to throw Calvin Ridley into this group, because Calvin Ridley now going to be sort of taking his year 2 step up. Offense now being run by the same guy who turned the Tampa offense into the fantasy scoring bonanza passing attack offense that it was last year. And of course, Chris Godwin on the aforementioned Tampa team, who is getting a lot of buzz because I guess Adam Humphries is gone, and it's another year in this offense. And why is Chris Godwin so much better this year than last year, considering he only had 59 receptions last season, 95 targets, nothing mind-blowing? What's better about Godwin this year? Is it the departure of Humphries that has pushed him up, or just his performance on the field?
Well, let's start with the obvious. Chris Godwin is good. He's a really good player heading into his 3rd season. So that right there, traditionally, receivers in their 3rd season have the best chance for breakout. Now, people I think are very excited about the Tampa Bay offense. There's a new coaching staff there. Goodbye, Dirk Cutter. Okay, goodbye, Todd Monken, which we liked, but now Bruce Arians comes to town. People have positive memories of Bruce Arians' offense. We know Mike Evans is going to get his. I think we all agree Mike Evans is a great fantasy receiver. I don't know if we consider him an elite real-life receiver. A very good one, but not an elite one. Enter Chris Godwin, who in Penn State was a great prospect, looked the part. He's one of those mature-looking, crisp route-running players. People are optimistic for good reason. I think in a make-or-break year for Jameis Winston, in a new Bruce Arians offense, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And sure, they did clear out some of the targets. Adam Humphries is gone.
Deshaun
There's
Jackson,
not really
yeah.
Deshaun Jackson's gone. O.J. Howard hasn't really been utilized as a volume pass catcher. I think that what people were hoping for him to be an 80-catch tight end, part of the reason I've read that they took O.J. Howard because they felt like they were getting 2 players in one. They were getting an elite lineman and also a player that's more than capable. You saw it last year of sick plays in the passing game. So I'm optimistic on Godwin, and then if his ADP stays in the 4th round, I'm certainly going to bite there. But I've seen him going in the end of the 3rd right now, and I don't have really a good reason to tell you why not to do it. There's a lot of it's projection taking him there because he hasn't done it yet. Like you just pointed out, his last year stats didn't blow you out the water, but it's okay to get ahead of it sometimes. Chris Godwin, I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, are you okay with taking Chris Godwin ahead of Mike Williams or Calvin Ridley or Tyler Lockett, where he's going right now, or Tyler
Lockett? No. Yeah, I mean that is the question, isn't it? I think in a draft, when I'm on the clock and it's my money on the line, I think Tyler Lockett and Mike Williams have been the players I've been most frequently clicking draft on. But if those players are gone and I want to diversify my portfolio a little bit, Chris Godwin, I don't have any more reason to think that he won't be successful than Mike Williams. So Tyler Lockett, I think, is a better bet based on his upgraded situation. I think that's bettable, whereas Godwin's more projectable. if that makes any sense. So
Absolutely.
all those.
Let me throw out a player name because we got to keep this moving forward. I'm going to throw out a player name that's on every one of my best ball leagues right now, 100% of them. And that is a very rare thing. This one player is on every single best ball league. I've done about 18 of them at this point. He's on every single one. And that's Tyreek Hill. Is this the opportunity of a lifetime for people who haven't figured out that this guy is going to actually, probably more likely than not, play this out the full season this year?
Well, nobody knows, and I think you're smart to do that. Now, you get what you take. You're not the price in which you're having to take him, the 8th round. It makes total sense to do it because especially in a best ball format where the payouts are top heavy, you get nothing for finishing in 3rd place. That it's worth the gamble because who are you going to take there in the 8th round? You're going to take a quarterback. The quarterback that you take in the 8th round, you can get a perfectly good quarterback a round or 2 or 3 later of equal value. I think people are scared that he's not going to play. And sure, is there a chance he won't play this year or be suspended? Absolutely. But if you can get him in the 7th, 8th round, 9th round, it's worth the gamble. And if it doesn't work out in a season-long league, you just cut him. I think if we have the same amount of knowledge we do today and we're drafting for our season-long league, I'd probably even be a little more aggressive on him because there's some of the receivers in Kansas City you can get even later on that if Tyreek Hill doesn't play, have a good shot to produce. So, yeah, I'm with you. I've been drafting Tyreek Hill too. The room always groans. He's going right now around wide receiver 35, which is basically a low-end wide receiver 3. And obviously he has number 1 overall upside.
Like I said, I don't have a single team, not one, that does not have Tyreek Hill on it. 100%.
Well, we must not have drafted together yet because because I would be taking him from you in every draft. And I've often, joked that I've said that if, Saddam Hussein was going to give me fantasy points, I would consider drafting him. I know that's
I'm not judging. I'm not judging the guy's character. I'm just not. I'm just saying he's on the Chiefs, and this is a guy who, if there wasn't this scandal hanging over his head, would be number 6 overall, number 7. So we're talking about a top 7 or 8 guy.
I would have him at 3.
There you go. So even that's right. I mean, you can make an argument for him just about anywhere. Tyreek Hill is a beast. So absolutely, you can get a number 1 pick, and I don't believe he will be suspended. So that's my thought on that. All right, let's keep going. We're getting to the WR3 area, and let's talk about some names that you really like in this grouping. I'm seeing a lot of names, but I want to talk about some names that we maybe like a lot in this grouping. So I'm going to throw out some players. Robbie Anderson is one that pops quite a bit here. Allen Robinson, Dante Pettis. You have sort of this grouping of questionable. Marvin Jones Jr. is a guy I like a lot as a WR3. I think he's going a little bit later than maybe where he should, considering the lack of other targets on his team, and everybody's all excited about Kenny G. But hey, Marvin Jones Jr. is basically like Kenny G light, and you can get him multiple rounds later.
I don't understand Dante Pettis going at wide receiver 32 right now. I just don't get it at all. People are forgetting that Deebo Samuel, the rookie, was drafted higher this year than Pettis was last year. Did Pettis do anything last year that made you think that he is primed for a breakout? Now, he did have a strong finish to the season, which we do like. From week 12 on, he got you at least 13 fantasy points, and he did have a blow-up week in week 13. So I guess I could see it a little bit, but I just don't see why you need to take him that early. Deebo Samuel has an equal chance to become the wide receiver 1 on that team. Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't there when Pettis had his strong 4 or 5 game stretch. I mean, now, of course, yes, could it be Dante Pettis as the number 1 wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers this year? Sure, but we just don't know because it's a new quarterback. Both of these guys are coming in without having really connected yet with Jimmy G. I'd rather just take the gamble on Deebo Samuel later.
I mean, there's not that much going on in this. I mean, you have to look at the comparable. So I'm going to play devil's advocate because I agree with you. I don't think Dante Pettis, by the way, didn't do shit last year. But he didn't have a quarterback. I don't know how you judge that.
Well, in the Dante Pettis last year, he in week 12, his fantasy points went 17, 29, 14, 13, 5. So he did have like a month stretch where he performed really well.
He had the great game against Seattle. He had a couple of games where he approached 100 yards, but he had one great game with 2 touchdowns, and then he had a couple other okay games with 1 touchdown.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, you can't judge this little stretch. It doesn't mean
nothing that makes you think that he has the number 1 locked in wide receiver 1 position on his team secured. Like, it's just, and he's being drafted as if he does.
It's just a speculation at that point, because if you look at who else is available at that point in the draft, there are some misses. Like I said, I have him down here on the Fantasy Pros average ADP that I'm looking at right now. It shows Dante Pettis at WR35, right? So going right after, ahead of him are Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis, Will Fuller, Allen Robinson, even Christian Kirk, who I don't mind Christian Kirk, by the way. It should be interesting. But
he's on my list. I wrote him down as players I'm avoiding, and I'm okay being wrong on Christian Kirk, but they brought in 3 new receivers. It's a new head coach. This head coach did not draft Christian Kirk. Now, and they took a receiver, Andy Isabella, in the 2nd round. They took Hakeem Butler at the very beginning of the 4th round. I just don't think that Kirk. People are high on him. He's going in like the 6th round. I just don't see that there's a lot more risk with him, since this is not Cliff Kingsbury's guy. He didn't draft him.
Well, let me throw some names out of guys in this range that are in similar situations, because we're talking about some rookies now, right? Or some young players that we don't know exactly what their deal is. You've got Christian Kirk, Dante Pettis. Within this group, I'm going to throw these names out: Cortland Sutton, N'Keal Harry, DK Metcalf, Dede Westbrook, Mecole Hardman. Okay? Every single one of those, and maybe I'll throw Geronimo Allison into that group. Every single one of these guys are young players. Some of them are rookies, insecure roles, like a Mecole Hardman. Hey, I want a fucking wide receiver from the Chiefs because it's the Chiefs. But I mean, if Tyreek Hill plays, is Mecole Hardman going to get a whole lot of action between Hill and Kelsey and Sammy Watkins and all that they have going on over there? Same deal with N'Keal Harry. Is it really easy for a player to get acclimated into this Patriots offense, which is extremely complex? We haven't seen too many rookies be successful early on in that very complicated system with Tom Brady, who's all about timing and all of that. I mean, even great veterans can't figure shit out with the Patriots. And then DK Metcalf, who finally is a big wide receiver for a Seattle team. Is he big? Wait, am I crazy?
DK Metcalf he's 6'2", but he
is a big guy.
He's fat.
Yeah.
Yes, he's fat, and he's fast as hell, man.
So
he tore up the combine, the draft combine, with his straight line speed, his 40 time. He was lacking in the agility skills. I think it was all time bad agility skills. But as a straight line runner, it's going to be difficult for someone to match his size and speed.
He kind of brings that same mix that actually probably hasn't been very successful for a lot of teams, where you get this big burner and they can't run precise routes. But on this Seattle team, do they really need that? Again, Russell Wilson, what's he doing? He's just scrambling around and throwing accurate bombs to players. So he's a big dude on a team that hasn't had a big wide receiver in many, many years. So you have this whole group, and it's no lock. I like Geronimo Allison too. He's on a better team, lots of opportunity with the Packers.
Can I give you we didn't ask for sleepers yet, but sleeper based on what you said about Geronimo Allison. Now, I see a lot of love for Geronimo Allison, and rightfully so. He's one of those guys that Aaron Rodgers trusts. He got hurt last year. He was off to a pretty good start, but everything I'm seeing is there's a wide receiver on the Packers named Jake Kumaro. And he's not young. He's like 26 or 27 years old. And early in the offseason activities, he's been performing. And just today, on June 11th, there was a practice, and Kumaro caught 1 or 2 touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers. And he seems to be developing into this player that Rodgers trusts. Now, I'm going to follow him very closely in the offseason because this is a player that's going undrafted right now. In deep dynasty leagues, I've picked him up everywhere, Kumaro. It's someone that could literally be under the radar. And in 2019, there's no such things as sleepers anymore because everybody has access to information. He's somebody that we should keep an eye on.
I love it. And you mentioned sleepers, so let's jump into that portion of this breakdown as we're getting towards the end of our hour plus of time for this wide receiver breakdown. So we've covered sort of wide receiver 1, 2, 3. Let's talk about some players we can get outside of the WR1, 2, 3 range that we think people are sleeping on a little bit too much, that maybe have a chance to win you your league if things work out, in a positive way. So I'm going to let you, I'll have you start off. You give me one or two, and then I have a couple, and then we'll do a little bit of back and forth. But don't grab the ones that I'm thinking about, because then I'm going to be out of luck.
All right, so I'll stay away from Devontae Parker then.
Okay, thank you.
The king,
Stay off from Parker.
as I call it, the king of spring.
Yeah. I have a similar name that you'll recognize and be like, oh yeah, of course he chose him. But go ahead.
All right, we'll do this rapid fire style so we can wrap it up. So for me, it's Kiki QT. Kiki QT is coming into his second year. I know Will Fuller's coming back, but I think this is the year Houston's offense reaches its elite potential. I think we could see something in the Kansas City Chiefs range of outcomes where this is the number one passing attack. So again, you're having to take Kiki QT around wide receiver 35-ish, maybe even lower, probably wide receiver
will blow your
44.
Mind. 49.
Yeah, okay. So you're taking him out close to wide receiver 50, which is the double-digit rounds. And I think that he could be a key part. I'm not saying he's going to finish as a top 5 or 8 receiver, but I think he could finish easily as a top 18, top 15 receiver where he's giving you consistent PPR production each week. What do you think about Kiki as a sneaky guy you can get late that has the chance in a high-powered passing attack?
Listen, I love Kiki Kuti, and if you listen to my DFS pod in season last year, there was a lot of, whenever I highlight a very specific player, especially a value play, if I could find a song to go along with that player name, I'll play it and just do a little bit of that. And, the Drake Kiki song was played a few times.
Quite often.
Yeah, quite a few times last year. So, absolutely, I like Kiki Kuti. And I'll throw one out here, too. I mean, there's a couple of names that stand out if we're just going outside of top 36. I don't want to cheat with Marvin Jones. He's just like too obvious. Larry Fitzgerald is another really obvious one outside of the top 36 ADP. I don't know why he's there. But one guy I'm going to give you, and it's a little surprise, but then you'll be like, yeah, of course you chose him. Dante Moncrief.
Interesting name right there.
Pittsburgh
Steelers.
The Steelers are a team that have turned shit retreads, and they are great with taking a player, finding the perfect role for them, and exploiting it. Moncrief, talented guy, never quite got it all together, couldn't play much with Andrew Luck when he was healthy, all those issues. Do you think Moncrief is being undervalued at WR59 if he gets you have Juju Smith-Schuster in the Juju Smith-Schuster role, no more targets available. He already has a massive number.
The case for is that the Steelers threw the most out of any team in the NFL last year, close to 700 times. And if Ben Roethlisberger, who was just signed to an extension, is playing as capable and as we know he can and throwing that football down the field, you're right. There's room for another receiver to step up. They have James Washington coming into his second year. We already know that Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the main target on that team. And they drafted Deontay Johnson, the rookie. So sure enough, there is the number 2 wide receiver role up for grabs. So that could be a sneaky pick, and you're not going to have to reach or go after him in your drafts. He's just going to fall right in your lap. So yeah, I think that would be he's
available when you're drafting. He's available, around 13, 14, like whenever you want, and you're ready to grab this guy. He's still there. He's always still there.
Okay. So So you want to just do this how we're going
Yeah,
back
give
and
me
forth,
another one.
ping pong, back and forth?
I mean, this is how these are the gems that will help you win your league. It's I always talk about it's not those first 3 picks. It's these guys. If one of these, if you take a Dante Moncrief here and he emerges as your WR2 scorer, that's a league winning situation. If you take Kiki Kuti and he comes out and he becomes a PPR beast this year, and you're playing him in your flex and he's delivering WR2 numbers, that is how you win your league. So let's keep it going.
Okay, so currently ADP is wide receiver 59. I have Zay Jones as someone who I think is being undervalued, and I've been going after. Zay Jones had a disappointing rookie year, but going back to his college days, he is the all-time season leader in receptions. I think he has over 150 catches in one season. Buffalo took him in the second round. He's had, again, some ups and downs, but I think that in year 3, right, it is year 3 for him, that he is ready to break out. So you're not having to pay up for him. Last year, he finished the year with 7 touchdowns, only 56 catches and 650 yards. This is one of those players I think could double his production. 6'2", 200 pounds, only 24 years old. It's been a shaky start. People are ignoring him in drafts. Zay Jones, for me, looks like a player that could end up in the top 24 receivers that you're not having to take until wide receiver 60.
I mean, I love all of the Buffalo group. I'm not sure how you know which of John Brown or Zay Jones or Robert Foster is going to emerge, if one of them emerges as sort of a primary wide receiver. But I do love them all in best ball leagues, for sure. And if Zay Jones, I did not realize he had that much pedigree, being a second-round pick. I think people are valuing Robert Foster ahead of him. I've been a little bit higher maybe on John Brown. Similar reasons. I just think he's a talented guy, and I think that offense really, really suits him. But, yeah.
I mean, one of them, like I said, John Brown is going to have his spiked weeks, and I think Robert Foster, again, is someone that we look to have spiked weeks. I think that the consistent producer, one of them is going to evolve as a consistent producer. And I saw enough from Zay Jones in year 2 to think that he is set up to be the number 1 receiver. And by that, I mean the guy who's the most targeted, the most consistent in the Buffalo offense. And again, if you're wrong, you could just cut him. He's your 12th round or your 11th round pick. So Robert Foster coming to year 2, John Brown, new team. Sometimes has battled some injuries. I think that the best bet in that offense is Zay Jones.
I like it. I mean, I'll keep it going. Another late round pick. I really like. If we have another,
we'll go one more each.
Yeah, we'll go one more each. So we're talking late round picks at the wide receiver position that have potential to sort of be a starter. All right, we're not talking about somebody. You don't generally get a late wide receiver that's going to be your WR1 for your team, but one guy I like is Deshaun Hamilton from the Broncos. Coming on strong towards the end of last season. And I just want to pull up his numbers, but, they're saying Manny Sanders is coming back, so we'll have to see what the story is there. But, I mean, who else do they have? We've seen that Cortland Sutton is really not suited for a volume role. And we saw some volume for Deshaun Hamilton, so this pick, I guess, kind of assumes that maybe Manny Sanders isn't going to be back at full force. And I have a hard time believing it because his injury is 6 months ago or 7 months ago. But
yeah, but I'm going to send you some videos so you can send it out to your Twitter followers. I'm going to send it out to mine as well. It was circulating. Manny Sanders is back on the field running full routes already. We may end up seeing one of these Adrian Peterson situations where he just overcomes the impossible. He had an Achilles tear. It was late in the season.
You can't. Come on. We can't give up on what we've talked about. That you cannot come back from an Achilles even in a whole year.
I agree. I agree. But I just want you to see this video, and then you can make a judgment.
Well, nonetheless, I agree with you. And yeah, you did mention that, and I was remembering it after I made this pick. But it's an Achilles, and we haven't seen anyone really come back from that injury in this amount of time or ever.
Hopefully Kevin Durant will. If you watched that game last night, I feel.
And now, is that an official tear? I saw something terrible.
Yeah. It's a severe Achilles injury. Again, listen. I love basketball. You love basketball. He's not going to play next season. That's my Right. I mean, somebody's still going to give him a max contract. You know, I mean, if you're the Knicks, you still do it. You know, you just it's for another debate.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. As a suffering Knicks fan, that sucked. But
I know.
Or you know, I'll throw out
right.
another name too that I really like here, a rookie name, A.J. Brown from the Titans. Now, I don't love that Titans offense that much, but A.J. Brown, really great pedigree, high draft pick. Has everything you think a player needs to be successful. I don't think it'll be an early season story, but maybe later on in the season a player like that can start to come on, especially if, you know, the Titans don't suck.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. I mean, A.J. Brown was atop most rookie boards before the draft, and he fell in your rookie rankings mostly because of the landing spot. Marcus Mariota is in a do-or-die season. I always like that. They brought in a real quarterback, Tannehill, to pressure him.
Is he a real quarterback, though?
Yeah, I would say he's a top 40 NFL starter, meaning a very high-end backup. I think that if Tannehill is on your real NFL team and he has to come in because the starter's hurt for 3 games, I think that's a player I'm confident in.
One of the better backups in the league for sure.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So he's not a top 28 QB. He's not the guy you want starting for your team. So I'm gonna go deep here. Wide receiver. I think 100.
Well, I think I know who it is.
Wait,
let me guess.
Okay,
let me guess before you say it. And if I don't, then I'm gonna call this guy another sleeper. Are we talking John Ross?
Oh, I had Ross on my list. I knew that you and I had talked about him, so I figured you were going to talk about it. I do like John Ross. I think in this new offense, with Zach Taylor's the head coach, he has a chance to, in year 3, to really break out. He was a touchdown scorer, and you and I both agreed. We talked through that. We like John Ross as a late round pick, but no, I was going to say one that is basically you can get in the last round of any draft. I'm keeping an eye on DJ Shark. He didn't have a great rookie season, but it was a Blake Bortles offense. Enter Nick Foles. He's going to have a fresh chance. He's only 22 years old. He's 6'3", almost 200 pounds, and he's fast. They drafted him high last year. They took him in the 2nd round. I don't see any reason why he won't get opportunities. Who else is really there? Keelan Cole flamed out after having a promising 2017. Marquise Lee, you can't count on to stay healthy. And now with at least a competent quarterback play, I think DJ Shark has at least a chance to return top 36 value.
What do you think
about Shark?
Listen, he's got size, he's got speed, he's got pedigree. The only thing he doesn't have is any sort of visual evidence that he's an NFL caliber player. But
with your last pick and an upgraded quarterback situation, don't you think that he's worth at least? I mean, the good thing is you'll know in the first 2 weeks if he's not in the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. If he has 2 targets and 3 targets, you cut him. But what if he's got 9 targets, even if it's for low yardage, for 60 yards and a touchdown? Then he gets 11 targets for 80 yards and a touchdown. You're like, I struck gold in the last round. It's just somebody that I'm drafting with that last pick, even after I take my kicker or my defense.
Well, let me give some real talk. My real talk is it would have to be a deep fucking league for me to have a guy like this on my bench, because he's the kind of player that I'm just going to be ready and waiting for on waivers if he shows anything. Right,
but then you have to compete for fab.
Fine, but what I want to do with my bench, my approach to fan, and that is not wide receiver position related, because we're talking about deep sleepers, but like real talk, I'm stashing running back handcuffs on my bench way before I'm putting deep sleeper wide receivers on my bench to this level. That doesn't mean he's not a great pick, and if I'm in a massively deep league, which I know a lot of your leagues are like this, we're in some leagues together where it's so freaking deep that yes, a DJ Shark would come into play, but at that point it's a league with multiple, a flex, maybe a super flex, another flex, 5, a lot of positions, a lot of players where your running back type handcuff. When I talk about running back handcuff, I'm talking about these running backs who you really don't want, but then if there's an injury ahead of them, they will win you your league type guys. But those for me are more secure bottom of the bench guys. But that said, if we're asking about DJ Shark, for example, in my dynasty league, or as a player to keep a very close eye on as camp progresses, if he becomes a player that looks like he's going to start for the Jaguars, then yes, I think that ADP of, WR94, WR95 right now will shoot up. Do you think Dede Westbrook is the guy to own on that team? I mean,
Seems like the best bet. Dede seems like the best bet for production. He seems like he's the most talented, but he's not somebody. He's not a player that I've drafted in any drafts. Maybe I'll get 1 or 2 shares in best ball, but
do we even know who their WR1 is going to be? Like, is it?
No, that's my point. I think you've actually made my point here. Everyone's drafting Dede like it's him, but why can't it be DJ Shark? He's got the profile, he has the pedigree. Dede wasn't even drafted too high. I don't think he was he definitely wasn't a first or second round pick. I think that Shark should be you get him basically for your last pick, and he could easily be going where Dede's going by draft season. So that was really my point, is that it doesn't even have to be that deep of a lead, because it's going to be a quick reveal. With these handcuffs that you're talking about drafting, which I like drafting handcuffs too, but as soon as the bye weeks hit, as soon as injury hits, you have to drop those guys anyway. You're going to know before the bye weeks if DJ Shark is worth rostering. In week 1 and week 2, you can cut his ass if he's not getting targeted. That's what's the benefit of taking him versus, say, a handcuff that you need an injury to use.
Absolutely. And by the way, no matter who that last person on your bench is, 8 times out of 10, almost 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, after week 1 and week 2 of the actual football season are the most active you're ever going to be on waivers, because some things have revealed themselves that weekend. Even just playing time issues start to reveal themselves.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap here.
All right, guys. So this is it. WR position rankings June 11th. So early season. Coming up next, we're going to have the tight end and quarterback position breakdown all in one pod, and then we will have covered the entirety of your fantasy football draft as of early June. And from there, again, what I talked about early in this pod, we're coming out with our written rankings, our notes, a full blast draft kit that will sort of adjust for the various different contest types, tiers, our favorite players, our sleepers, our injury avoids, all of that great stuff. We have you covered. Listen to this pod. Look for it on DFSArmy.com. We're going to have you covered for the entire fantasy football season. Awesome tools. We're going to make you crush your leagues. I got the best season-long fantasy football guy I know, Season Long Says, with me here to guide us on this journey. So hopefully we're going to have an awesome season.
Geek is guaranteeing or triple your money back.
Triple your money back on this pod only. On the fee to listen to this podcast. But yeah, we can only bring you the information. What you do with it is up to you. But actually, speaking of that, 50% of your fantasy league is your draft. The other 50% is your in-season management, and we've got that covered too for our DFSArmy.com subscribers, VIP members. They get that within our Slack channel. We have a season-long discussion. Who do I start? Who do I sit? You can ask pros. They will answer your questions. Myself, Alan, Mitch.
I'll help you out.
We're gonna answer your questions.
Just tweet me.
We're gonna let you know.
I don't mind making all these important decisions for you.
Follow Alan on Twitter. What is your Twitter?
At Alan Seslowski. You could see it in the notes, the show notes, to get the correct spelling.
There we go. It's in the show notes. And Alan Seslowski on Twitter. I'm FFootballGeek on Twitter. We'll be back next time breaking down the quarterback and tight end positions. Alan, thanks for coming on the show. Let's do this again real soon.
Anytime, my brother. Anytime.
All right, man.